Don Draper is up there with James Bond and Harvey Specter as one of the best dressed characters to ever be seen on screen. We're all familiar with his two-piece suits and retro casual outfits, but there's a lot more to this mysterious ad exec style than that. If you want to dress like Don Draper, you have two options. You could either copy his looks exactly as they were in the show, being as true as possible to the original styles and pieces, or we could adopt the style philosophy of Don Draper and modernize it for 2024. Assuming you don't want to look like you're participating in a Mad Men cosplay, I think the second option is much more useful in our mission to become more stylish young gentlemen. So in this video, I'm going to break down what Jon Hamm's character, Don Draper, wore in various seasons of the show and suggest how we could bring it up to date. Think of this as a guide to how Don Draper would dress if he were a man in 2024. Here's how Don Draper would wear his suits today. The two-piece was by far the trademark look of Don Draper, and there's no reason you can't continue to wear one today. The fit of Don's suit jackets is quite slim and it still looks up to date, although men did wear their trousers slightly looser back in the 60s. You'll also notice the lapels of the jacket are very slim. This was typical of the time, and men's lapels is one of those things that changes in size over the decades as fashions come and go. In the 1960s, slim notch lapels were in, and in the 1980s, big peak lapels were the trend. Right now, we're in a period of moderation with a slight lean toward peak lapels, which are always slightly larger. So I think Don Draper, given his conservative taste, would go for a medium-sized notch or peak lapel if he were around today. Another sign of Don's conservatism is his choice of colors and patterns. He only goes for the most muted tones like blue, grey and brown. And to this day, playing it safe is a very stylish option. So I believe if Don were around today, he would avoid the trend for brightly coloured suits and bold patterns. And while the double-breasted suit is very popular today, not so much in the 1960s, so we only see Don wearing a single-breasted suit. Given its current acceptance in classic menswear, perhaps Don would wear a double-breasted suit from time to time if he were still alive. But there's no reason to change from the single-breasted suit, so I would stick with that one for the most authentic look. One thing I think he would change would be the width of his ties. Skinny ties were very popular in the 1960s, but we came out of a trend for wearing super skinny ties about 10 years ago, so wearing one today looks incredibly outdated. Just like the lapels, I think moderation is key, so Don would probably go for a medium width tie these days. One thing he'd probably keep the same would be his preference for muted colours and patterns. Understated is still stylish and there's no reason to change that at all. Another thing I think he would keep the same would be his pocket squares. Don liked a simple white pocket square in a presidential fold, which remains just as versatile and stylish today. A lot of guys these days, myself included, like to get quite flamboyant with our pocket squares, but don't forget the power of a simple white fold. For coats, he liked single-breasted overcoats, raincoats and trench coats. His style choices were very classic and I would add these to a modern day winter coat closet without hesitation. Unfortunately, we rarely get a look at the shoes Don is wearing in the office, but we can see they're always black. And a style like Oxford's or Derby's would be just as perfect for Don today as they were in the 1960s. One final thing that is a huge part of Don Draper's formal style is the fedora hat. Like most men of his time, he wore one pretty much whenever he was outside in a suit. But the fedora honestly has been out of style for decades now. And when something has been as unpopular as the fedora is for such a long period of time, I don't believe it can any longer be considered part of classic style. And wearing one, especially as a young guy, is going to make you look extremely retro. So if you like the vintage look, then that's fine, but that's something else entirely, and this video is about bringing Don Draper's look up to date. So if he were around in 2024, I have very little doubt that he would absolutely not wear a fedora hat. Do you like my discouraging of the fedora? Now let's take a look at Don's casual style. There are some fantastic casual outfits throughout the seasons of Mad Men. A favourite casual style staple of Don's is the polo shirt. These were in style in the 1960s and they're still in style today. Don mostly wears quite low-key polo shirts with little detailing, unlike some of the more flamboyant styles that were around back then and are still available today. Sometimes he went for a polo shirt with a tipped collar. Not only is this just a little bit more visually interesting, but it also accentuates the V around your neck, which in turn makes your shoulders look broader. Don also liked to pair his polos with a blazer, and I want to talk about that now as we look at his more casual, dressy style. Wearing a polo shirt underneath a blazer is a great way to strike the right balance between formal and casual, at places where the dress code is unclear, like a house party or a dinner party. Don Draper is a great example of how to do this. I believe he would still wear outfits exactly like this one if he were around today. One of my favorite elements to Don Draper's style is his choice of sports coats. I really love the check one that he pulled out from time to time for parties. It's arguably one of the most flamboyant things he wore, but it's definitely nothing that a stylish man in 2024 should be afraid of. So if you're a professional gentleman who needs a serious business casual wardrobe, then I think a sports coat like this would be one of your best purchases. Another piece of his dressy, casual wardrobe that Don Draper liked a lot was the V-neck sweater, especially with a white dress shirt. He had these in classic colors like black and brown. If you're also tall and fairly athletic, the V-neck sweater is going to look great on you. In terms of his pants, we don't really see Don wearing jeans. Jeans at the time were still mostly worn by teenagers or people who were part of a counterculture, and Don was certainly neither. These days, he might wear jeans if he were around, but there's also nothing wrong with avoiding denim either. In fact, if you stick to chinos and wool pants for your Don-inspired outfits, they're much more likely to look sartorial and stand out. However, Don was very American in his style choices, and he always wore a belt with his pants. None of those European side adjusters for him. And he mostly stuck to darker colors or khaki. In terms of his casual shoes, it's very likely that Don would have worn sneakers if he were around today. But given his conservative color palette, I'd say he'd probably either go for just a white sneaker, a brown leather sneaker, or maybe he'd go for a pair of Converse, which today are a much less rebellious style of shoe than they were in the 1960s. When dressed up, but still casual, we did see him wearing a pair of oxblood tassel loafers with a V-neck sweater and a pair of tobacco brown pants. I see no reason why he couldn't still wear these today, and I think that would look excellent. On the weekends at home, Don liked a short sleeve button-down shirt, especially with some kind of check pattern, or a flannel shirt. Although you could still buy these pretty much everywhere today, including Walmart, I don't think that's what Don Draper would choose today as a stylish man. If he wanted to wear a short sleeve shirt, he'd probably go with something plain in a muted color. Or perhaps he'd go for a Cuban collar shirt, which is a very popular off-duty look for stylish guys today. You've got to remember that Don Draper's character wasn't necessarily meant to be stylish all the time. As well as being a high-status Madison Avenue creative director, he was also a man in his 40s with a divorce and 2 kids. So naturally, the character was designed to make some style choices that weren't particularly impressive. That's why I think it's better to consider the overall mood and aesthetic of his outfits and bring that into 2024. Men these days like to wear a lot more jewelry than they did in the 60s. It's hard to know whether Don would have rocked a bracelet or a necklace if he were around today, but given his conservative tastes, I'd say probably not. What he did wear and would certainly still wear was a classic wristwatch. Take a look at these styles worn by Don in the various seasons. You'll notice they are all very classic styles you could still wear today. In my opinion, the 2 that look the most modern are the Rolex Explorer and the Omega Seamaster DeVille. I really like the DeVille with the black dial because it looks very sleek and elegant, which are definitely 2 words that come to mind when I think of the show Mad Men as a whole. These days, it's never been easier to find an affordable, high-quality wristwatch in a classic style, thanks to brands like Seiko, Orient, and Citizen. So if you're not yet at a creative director level salary, you'll still be able to find an equivalent style on a budget. Don also loved sunglasses, and the styles he chose in the 60s would look just as impressive today. His signature pair from the show were these gold, square-framed aviators. And they're available on Amazon, so I'll be putting the link to these in the description. Once we've modernized Don Draper's style, I think he serves as an excellent style role model for a man today. The majority of his style choices have proved to be very timeless, but there are some things like the fedora and the width of his ties that need updating. I hope this video has proved useful and given you some information that you wouldn't find on any other YouTube video. One character from Mad Men whom I think is even better dressed than Don Draper is Roger Sterling. So his style is a little bit more flamboyant, but let me know if you would enjoy seeing a video about him. Now if you liked this video, I am sure you will enjoy the breakdown I've done about James Bond's casual style which is the top viewed video on my YouTube channel. So I hope you get the chance to watch this video if you haven't already, and until the next one, I'll catch up with you all in the comments.